Scarecrow Beats.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Thank you all for being patient while I gave people time to come in. But now we're 10 minutes into it, and I'll just ask you all to hit the share button. This was inspired by Dennis Sperling and Passport OG. And with that being said, I want to give special shouts out right now to Universal UC, Armando Mayo, MR Me, Passport OG, and A Dean for coming through on the Cash App. I really do appreciate that from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. And in honor of the Reverend Brother Pastor Deacon Dr. Attorney Sperling, I will be sometimes asking you to put certain things in the chat. I think it's hilarious when he says, somebody put X, Y, and Z in the chat room. And usually whatever he says to put X, whatever he says to put in the chat room is hilarious. So that being said, you might hear me saying that too, in honor, not in derision, but in honor of Dennis Sperling. It was this morning, my time, when I heard Dennis Sperling going in on King Harris for some of the foolishness and the effery. And this brings to mind class compression. I'm trying to remember who I first heard use that term. Maybe it was Mr. Samuels, maybe it was Dennis Sperling. The second person I heard use it, though, was Lion of MGTOW. Shout out to you if you were within earshot of this. This is a major issue. And this brings to mind someone with whom I went to school for 1 year in high school. Nice guy. He was the son. You may have heard me mention him before. By the way, is the music too loud for my voice, or is my voice too loud for the music? Y'all let me know. Then I'll properly balance them, because I'm not sure how they sound to you. My ears are actually covered up right now. My classmate for a year in high school was from a middle-class family. his country town. Okay, voices matching. All right, thanks a million. So I'll dim the music just a bit, just a bit. All right, so my classmate was from a middle class family, but his country town in which he lived, which is a little bit further inland, it was north of Interstate 10, was well, that was something else. There, he was, in fact, from one of the better, well off families, black families. And that can be a problem. Being from one of the wealthiest black families nearby can be a major issue. When I went to visit my cousins, who at that time lived in northern Mississippi, um, this is 2 years before I met this particular classmate of mine. I remember going to visit these cousins, and it had been the first time that I had seen them in 2 years, but it had been the first time in about 6 since I had been to where they lived. I remember driving around with them. We went to some of the parties, and we went to one of these games in Memphis, a football game, and they were the rich kids on the block in terms of that black community there. They were the most well off. My aunt was and is a practicing medical doctor. Their dad was a dentist. He's gone now. So when we were hanging out, I pretty much saw that that things were, they were kind of at the top of where they were ever going to be in life. And on the way back, I remember on the way back to where we lived, my dad said to me, listen, I asked him, listen, how do you and their father get along? And he said, get along well enough. Why? And I told him, because when I was younger, y'all actually kind of reminded me of each other. And he said to me, oh, hell no. And when we stopped, he sent my brother to go get something because my brother was younger. He was not yet out of elementary school. And I was just starting high school. I mean, first maybe month of high school. And my pop said to me, listen, son, I'm going to tell you about their dad. Now, their dad's got outside kids. No, we've been nice, but I do not remind you of him because I ain't about to have no outside kids. That's your brother over there. I'm not willing to give you all kids by some other woman while I'm married to your mom. I later found out that when my aunt's ex-husband and she had begun dating back when she and my father and he were in college, my dad was intercepted from drawing a gun on him. I didn't find this out until about 8 years later. No, I'm sorry. It was 8 years later I found this out. Somebody at my parents' college reunion, which was after a week after I graduated Morehouse, said to my dad, hey, Doc, didn't you draw down on the dentist and pull a gun on him, or pull a pistol on him? And he was like, well, I wish you wouldn't have said that in front of my son. But I later on found out what happened. And my mom broke it down to me and said, your dad felt that he was using your aunt. And I saw his car later on outside of her apartment. So I knew he was at that time, your dad and I were just friends. And I saw that he was in the car. So I went and confronted him so that he wouldn't shoot the man. That said a lot to me right there. Moving forward, she went ahead and married him anyway. And my dad was not mean to this man after that. I don't think they ever actually saw each other face to face while my dad was holding the pistol. My father was probably going to throw his life away. to make sure that his sister was not used, and he's the younger sibling, 2 years younger than my aunt. He later told me, he said to me, Black, your cousins are the rich kids on the block. And the reason that I chose to live where we live at that time, it was where we lived. Now it's where we lived. He was saying to me, reason I chose our city, son, is because there are other Black middle class people there. That's why. And we're a short drive away from a few HBCUs. That was important because when I came up, I was the rich kid on the block and my parents ain't rich. And I thought about it. Yeah, grandmom and granddad ain't rich. That's right. He said, yeah, but granddad was the doctor. He was the Black doctor there, the only one. And so now here we are. Your cousin's dad is the only Black dentist. Your aunt is the Black doctor for right now. And so everybody thinks that your cousins are rich, and they always got to prove that they're just like everybody else. And you see how your cousin so-and-so was talking back to me and every other grown-up in there. That boy don't know when to fuck the shuck up. Talking to grown folks like they're regular block boys. That's what my pop said to me. And I said, well, you got a point. I mean, and the cousins are a set of twins. One cousin was talking back to grown-ups, but he would defend me and my brother. The other cousin was a bully, so he wouldn't say nothing to grown-ups, but he would always try to flex on my brother and me. And this was actually this is one of the things that sent the different branches of the family on different paths. That cousin is later on calmed down. He's no longer, of course, a bully, but he's going to be paying child support the rest of his life. He got 5. Now I got 3, 2 from a marriage. He got 5, ain't never been married. His own mother decided not to fix him up with a particular lady because of his child support. And my aunt, his mother, does not hate him. She's nothing like that. She simply said it's just going to be a burden for him. And she got him out of trouble because there was a point where he was running with drug dealers and drug users. He had a street name, Big Red. And he said he remembers waking up from a high one day and all he could hear was my aunt's voice at the door. He was hanging out with some of his boys that wanted to hang out. And she found out where he was, and all he could hear was her saying, I don't know nobody named Big Red. And she gave them his real name and said, is he here? I'm here to see him. She had to pay a lot for his defense, but she was able to get him off. He would have been looking at doing some serious time if he had no defense at all. She had made the decision. Now y'all understand why I can't tell y'all who I am. I'm letting y'all benefit from the lessons of my family, so I can't sit up and give my name. With all due respect to Mr. Sperling, the one thing about which we disagree is that we should all show our faces. I don't. Even if I showed it, the wrong person would wind up getting doxxed later on. And I don't have Dennis Sperling's resources yet to go filing lawsuits. And if I did, how would I collect? Tasha K, won. Cardi, if you won that, she ain't never going to get that money. And I don't think Cardi deserves it. But that's a different story. But you get to benefit from this lesson of my family. You see, my aunt had been this and felt the need to show that she was down. And so even when she wound up marrying a dentist, he was the same way. He had been the rich kid on the block in his section of the woods, his neck of the woods in Mississippi. His dad was successful. Quiet as it's kept. There were rumors that his dad wasn't actually his dad. Maybe not. I don't know. But he, to make a long story short, he and his brother, who were also twins, felt the need to show that they were down. So when they got to college with my parents and with my aunt, they were bragging about being these self-made country boys. Each of them went to college with a new car. They brag about being self-made country boys that knew how to do everything on their own. They built their own house in which they were born. But that type of John Henryism, yeah, they were bragging about, dumb stuff like building the house in which they were born so that their mom could have them in a house. Stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, okay, all right. They on some old Petey Wheatstraw type stuff. Born at 7 years old, that type thing. They were born grown men with beards and mustaches and, just real bad in words. And see, she went along with that stuff and got with one of them. And the thing is, the twin of her husband never took to her because now she became as important as that twin brother on some old jealousy type stuff. Foolishness, man. But class compression, even when she did not marry someone that was beneath her in class, so to speak, I mean socioeconomic class, even when she didn't do it, she did it behaviorally, and she paid when she had to give up her retirement to get her son, my cousin, out of legal trouble. The other one, well, I can't even talk to him no more. He wound up insulting Muhammad on the social media platform we shared. Had to cut him off because I knew what the Muslims saw that. It was over. Some of the Muslims saw through my page what he had said. It was over. He'd been found somewhere, and I would have been hard pressed to prove I had nothing to do with it, even though I was in Saudi when he said it. I was about to go to the States right after that, and I knew I could not afford for him to be found somewhere while I was in the States, and I can't prove I had nothing to do with it. It's a hard thing to prove. Hard to prove a negative. So partially to keep his butt alive, I just had to go ahead and cut ties. I ain't spoke to him since before that. But the thing is that even with this going on, the cousin that got into the legal trouble, the one that got 5 kids, has a daughter that doesn't even realize that his and my granddad was the first Black doctor where he lived. So I understand kind of what Mr. Sperling went through to a certain extent, not firsthand, but secondhand, through the daughter of my cousin who didn't know this until she got to be pretty big and reached out to me on Facebook and found out the family history through me, not from her father. It's like that. Now, let's move forward. What does it have to do with right now? When you look at King Harris, Dennis Sperling rightly told King, look, man, you don't know what this is like. But here's the problem, and I'm going to get straight to what it is that Dennis Sperling was trying to say, but he didn't get to in one sentence, and I'm going to say it after I rehash what Dennis Sperling said. King came up in the mansion, gated community like he was supposed to because his parents could do that for him. I mean, financially speaking, they did for him what they're supposed to do. But here's where the kicker comes in, though. So he came up not like his dad, not like his mom. He didn't have to wake up with roaches crawling on his face or sleep on a pallet or have uncles that were killers playing dominoes and spades in the house while he trying to sleep. And so he didn't have to go through all that struggle. Somebody typed struggle in the chat room with a K. He didn't have to struggle. He didn't know what silver spoon meant, but he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Hell, born with a gold spoon in his mouth. And when they said it, he didn't know what that was. And I'm not blaming him. But this is the one thing that we got to start telling these young cats when they do come up like this. See, King is representing, in a nutshell, the male version of the old sisters to whom Passport OG referred when he showed these old sisters that love chitlins and just want to pass on the tradition of pig intestines and malnutrition. Not even just Yeah, malnutrition, malnourishment, nutrition. I said it. N19 nutrition. Literally traces of boo-boo in your food. You can't cook that funk out. And that's the thing about it. See, hold up. Look what Roger Spice had to say. I don't know what the TAM is. Oh, I guess American Music Source. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I've been out of that for a while. But the thing is, King ain't got to be what he's trying to be. He's pretty much showing, no, man, I grew up on chitlins. I stand on chitlins. That's all. When you say I stand on business and you're using that to say that you a real N-word, all you saying is I stand on chitlins. You might as well be saying I stand on what gives the chitlins they smell and rhymes with the first syllable. Someone type chitlins in the chat room. This is what's important to understand about that. And shouts out to Passport OG again. If you're hearing this, man, give a shout out, man, because you pointed out how it was that we have to get over the chitlin mentality if we're going to learn something from some others and pick up the good that their culture has to offer. And not only that, Passport OG, I'm going to say what you didn't have to say. I'm going to say it for you. We got to get over the chitlin mentality if we're going to pass to others the good that comes from our culture. Our culture has good and bad. And considering what we've been through, we're actually better than what most people would expect. We're better than what I would expect, considering the trauma through which we have been. The thing is, why is it that brothers start to embody the good when they get away from the sisters, and the sisters insist on embodying the bad? Twerking on the top of a slave castle in Africa for the ancestors. Promoting chitlins to the next generation. And I ain't gonna lie, there was a time my dad fell victim to that stuff. He wants to sit up and talk about some, we raised generations off of that. And one day he said when I was grown, and he was going to respect my choice to not eat them. I never had them. I never could eat them. I couldn't swallow. And that's one thing. He never forced me to do it. And there were foods my father forced me to eat when I was young. But there's something, for some reason, chitlins, he never did. He was like, no, I ain't going to force him to eat no chitlins. But when I was older, later, an adult, he said we raised generations off of this. And at this point, I was working at a black-owned bank. And I've seen how we act when we know that black folk own a business. The way we act in and disrespect the establishment and the meaning of what it is to have a business. And I said, we raised some up-fuck generations that ain't saying nothing. What we have raised is evidence that we should give up the chitlins and replace them with something else. And don't get me wrong. Every culture has its food that sucks. Like, why you eating that? Or they got food that's just, it's not nasty. It's just strange. You think, is it even food? That's all. Every culture's got combinations of this stuff. When I was in Morocco, my first time, I remember when I went to this restaurant and it was run by this lady that had actually lived in the United States for a while. Her English was great. I remember my new wife at that time was looking at me like, y'all talking English. What the F y'all talking about? And I had to tell her, sweetheart, she cooks something that my grandmom used to cook. Tripe. Think I'm playing. Imagine you walk into a restaurant in Casablanca. They got a Moroccan woman working behind the counter. She hears you talk to your wife, and she starts talking to you in American English out of Texas and tells you, oh, speaking of Texas, there, and tells you, hey, wait, you from the Gulf Coast? Hey, you ever had tripe? I got some. And you're like, I had it from my grandma. Yeah. And you know it's not pork tripe because y'all in Morocco. That's what happened. And she was introducing it to the people. But it turned out they were already eating different parts of sheep. In Morocco, they eat all kinds of odd parts of the sheep. Like, honestly, during the holidays when they sacrifice a sheep, the last thing they eat is the meat. They go to they go to the head, liver, and they might have sheep tripe, and it doesn't stink like pork chitlins does. When tripe, maybe the guts, but no. I never had lamb chitlins, no. But what I do remember is that when they cut the lamb, it didn't stink like chitlins does. I remember that. And so I'm saying to say that a king is pretty much saying, I stand on chitlins. You cannot export the good of your culture to someone else when you are only willing to, or when you sit up bragging about the chitlins and the ratchetry and the low behavioral class and the lost value system. That's what King was promoting, bragging about. I'm going to say this, though. It's King's fault he bragged about it and disrespected his parents. Even if he got Down syndrome, he ain't that far gone. I just saw that, just saw in the chat where it said he had Down syndrome. And he might. I doubt it. Doesn't look like it to me. But I'm not the expert. But the thing is, I can tell from the way he spoke that he has enough intellect to know this is sure bit. He doesn't have the backbone to sit up and look the culture in the face and say, shuck that fit. Someone type shuck that fit in the chat. How many of y'all saw one of the skits with Desi Banks, the comedian? It's a skit where he gets in a car and this lady gets on him about somebody liking his picture, I think it is. And he says, say something else. No more dick. And every time she gets ready to say something, he says, no more dick. And she throws a fit, but she fucks the shuck up. If y'all saw that skit, then you understand the significance of what I'm about to say next. We got 23 in here. One, I'm going to ask y'all to hit the share button, please. And thanks to those who hit the like button. That's about 21 of you. So I really do appreciate that. But I'm going to ask y'all to hit the share button. One other thing, though. I'm going to ask y'all to put in the chat, no more nigga. Someone put that in there. No more nigga culture. No more niggerilla swag. None of that stuff. We're done bragging about how backwards and country we are if we grew up on a farm somewhere. We're done bragging about how tough we are if we came from the mean streets of Detroit, Michigan. I heard a Muslim saying that one time. A Muslim guy was giving a talk in Canada. And somebody in the back was talking. He was talking to some teenagers. Someone in the back was talking. He said, hey, man, if you don't close your mouth, man, I'm going to have some of these brothers bounce you out of here, man. They from Detroit. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the fuck does that have to do with it? Just send them to go and throw these little niches out. What being from Detroit got to do with it? You tough? You tough. It ain't because you're from Detroit. It's because you come from some neighborhood without basic infrastructure for you to survive, let alone thrive. That's why. You came up traumatized. That's why you tough, but you traumatized. And it done wore you to up foul. Just go ahead and say it. Sick of this, man. Thank you, Paul Wilson. Right there. No more. We're not bragging about how backwards we are, like these Bedouins do, or like some country brothers do. We ain't bragging about how ghetto we are. We ain't bragging about none of this foolishness. There's rarely ever a reason to brag. If we are lucky in life with something, if we had a good teacher and we become skilled at something, instead we say, thank God he sent me this teacher, I'm fortunate. Instead of sitting up saying, I'm tough, I run these streets, it's better to just say, I had these really good teachers for cybersecurity. I had the best teachers. I'll pass it on. You down? Goodness gracious. Somebody calling me international. I don't know if y'all can hear that through the Bluetooth, but somebody calling me international. I understand that, Charles. I can't stand the Akita issues either. I shun them for that. But I understand when you talk about the class. And when they ain't upper middle class, the thing is that they generally still tend to have some pretty good behaviors. Akita issues, that's true. But there are certain levels of behavior to which they won't stoop, except one thing. And Charles Irby knows what I'm about to say. He knows the phenomenon about which I'm going to speak at this point. And that is this. Even in these Warthin communities, the women want the thug. They want the Muslim thug. Forget his Akita. No, they want him to put his forehead to the ground. But when he lifts his forehead up, he got a tattoo between his eyebrows or something. Maybe something Islamic. Most of the time, you know the guy that these Warthin community sisters don't want ever? They never want the guy that was born to Muslim parents and raised as such and didn't go into the street stuff. Now, if he was born to Muslim parents, but he left Islam for a while because he wanted to go the King Harris, Chitlin, Nick culture route, oh, that's cool, that's fine. Then he comes back. Oh, he's changed now. What about the non-formers? They not former thugs. They not former gangsters. Fit the guck out of my face with that short bit. Assalamu alaikum, Charles. Sorry about forgetting to give you the proper greeting. My bad. My preacher gene just got activated. I'm the descendant of some preachers on my dad's side of the family. Well, Brian, to be honest with you, man, it's not that Islam has pookies. It's that the communities do. I mean, it's like over here, the Bedouins got pookies. Bedouins are a pookie culture themselves. I can't say that Islam has it. There's no message like that. It's just, they just want to be Arab niggas. Yeah, Hannibal, that's true. It's bad, man. It's not that, of course, it's always when they're not following the rules. The rules ain't the problem. It's like a GPS. You know, some people, they're given a real expensive GPS and it's good, but since it was free, they don't use it or they don't trust it. Sometimes they might let it talk a little bit, but they're like, I know the way. I know the shortcut. And then, but when they follow the directions, when you get around anybody, I'll say this, when you get around Muslims that actually take the directions seriously, and at least keep their dirt out of other people's lives. At least that, you don't find a dysfunction. But yeah, this is what I'm going to get to that Dennis Sperling didn't say. So I'm going to say it now. It's not King's fault. It is King's fault that he bragged about the foolishness. That is true. It's King's fault he got disrespectful with his parents and called his dad a nigga and said his parents were capping. They don't want to tell nobody, so I'm going to open this up and tell everybody. That is his fault. But we have to let these cats know, when those of us who did come up country or ghetto or contretto, I don't know, anything like that, when those of us who did grow up these ways start talking to these young guys, instead of just saying, you don't know what it's like. What we should say is, you didn't have to go through that. It ain't your fault you didn't go through that. It's a good thing. You weren't supposed to go through it. We were able to get you out of that before it even got to you. And we did it. And ain't nothing wrong with you growing up lucky like this as long as you appreciate it. So don't brag about being unlucky when you weren't. We did what we could. God gave us success. We gave you what we could, and you got to grow up in it with the benefits. Don't be ashamed of that. Don't let nobody shame you. Thank God for it and do what you can to pass that on to my grandkids. That's what's important. And those of us that did go through some sort of environmental dysfunctional rite of passage are not to blame because we had to go through it. All we got to do to make sure that it ain't our fault is that we don't brag about going through it and then try to belittle somebody that didn't. Because if you belittle them for not going through it, and you forget to tell them what is important, especially to tell young black men these days, it ain't your fault, they just gonna dig further in like King did and become the king of chitlins to prove that they're authentic and real. See, instead of saying you real, they not because you went through it, they didn't. Instead, what you say is you ain't have to go through it. You ain't supposed to go through it. We did what we could so you didn't need to go through it. Don't brag about that because it ain't even nothing to brag about. You can wind up confessing the crimes you didn't commit. You ain't supposed to be the N19 stereotype. So don't brag about it. You let them know. You tell them, man, it's like being a shot caller and calling yourself a scrub. That's what it's like. Since we love Jesus so much, you say to them, it will be like Jesus confessing to crimes and sins he never committed. Even if you believe that he was on that cross for our sins, which I don't, did he say I'm guilty? Did he go blaming himself for stuff that he didn't do? That's what it's like when you brag. And when we let these guys know that that's not how you do it, and it ain't their fault anyway, you let them know that they ain't even bragging, they're confessing. The innocent calling themselves guilty. When we start letting them know that, then we remove the incentive for them to dig in even more like King did. That's important, and that was the only thing missing. Someone type in the chat, it ain't your fault, black man. Someone type that in the chat. Someone type in, it ain't your fault, young black boy. You ain't a thug, it ain't your fault. You didn't grow up in the mean streets, it ain't your fault. You didn't have roaches crawling on your face, it ain't your fault. You weren't supposed to, and since we went through it, we got you out of it. I don't mean me, black mind, but I mean, the parents. And this is one of the things that we don't oftentimes like to do. Sometimes we'll talk to someone else's kid and we will say, you know what, your parents really did everything they could to get you out of that before you were even born, and they did it, and you're going to throw it away. But we forget to say, because we know that fuck dysfunctional Nick culture to which they're subjected. And we forget to say to them, it ain't your fault, ain't nothing wrong with it. You weren't supposed to go through it. And that's what we haven't started to say yet. I done seen some Muslims when they give talks, and they, especially if it's African-American Muslim that used to be thugged out, they get caught up in telling that part of their lives to the youth, both black and non-youth, both black and non-black youth, I mean. And the thing is, sometimes even these non-black youth will say, well, I mean, you must have had a lot of experiences and, it made you who you are today. Do you really hate your past? And they will make the mistake of saying, I don't hate my past. It made me who I am. I wouldn't give it up for nothing, but I don't want you to go through it. They make the mistake of saying that instead of saying, you know what? The job of human beings is for us to not have to go through this type of uckery in order to become the best we can be. We love to sit up and say dumb stuff like that. And that's why you got kids who don't have to go through this stuff trying to go through it. They think something's missing if they don't. Maybe people do need a rite of passage. But even if they need a rite of passage, that ain't got to be it. Oh, you need to go through some dysfunction and poverty. What the what for? We messed that up. That's something we messed up. And I ain't gonna lie, the first people I ever heard say dumb stuff like that wasn't the men. It wasn't them, but I heard the men say this later on. And they were usually raised by only mama, or mama didn't let dad tell what he needed to tell. And this takes me back to my high school classmate for that 1 year. Daddy was a preacher, I think. Mama was a lawyer. No, one of them was a preacher and a lawyer. I forgot which parent. He was coming to school in an old Mercedes. Old, but a Mercedes. Now, this was back when gas was cheap, but it was expensive for his ride because he was coming in from a long ways away. Yeah. And he had this need to prove who he was. And this dude later on, now mind you, the school I'm talking about was not a public school. Wasn't terribly expensive either, but it was not a public school. You were black and you weren't poor. You didn't have to be upper middle class, but if you were black and you weren't broke, your folks probably send you to this school if they wanted you to still get a black experience. Now, the parents were sending the kids to school to get a black middle class experience. The kids were in there, the kids, they had watched Boys in the Hood a few years before that. And quite a few of them were still in the hood. Even if their houses was nice, they were still in the hood. And you know what that meant? They got something to prove. And from this high school, we had one dude, he was one of them cats, had a gold tooth. He looked older than he really was. He had a receding hairline and a goatee when he was 16. He was one of them cats. He might not have been 16, actually. So everybody thought he was, real OG and everything. And he got to selling drugs. He dated the finest chick that went to the school. She's a teacher there now. She wasn't into no mess. She's one of them nice, sweet girls. But what does she want? Who does she want? Him. He wound up getting into drug dealing, carried some kind of assault rifle in his car, and wound up getting shot in the drug deal going bad. But he went to this school. His parents weren't rich, but he didn't have to go that life. The classmate of mine, small dude, short dude, he went the thug life. Drugs, God knows what else. He wound up doing 2 bids. And the funny thing was, this would really mess me up. He did 2 bids. One day I was on Facebook less than a year ago talking about how, the people in my neighborhood that had passed away, and not necessarily violently either. But I was just talking about how I was going to miss them. Even if I didn't live in that neighborhood no more, how I was going to miss them. I was saying, these people, they form my memories. They're important parts of my memories. And now they're gone. And when I said this, one of them was a friend of my dad. Was the dad of my friend and a friend of my dad. My dad's friend, my friend's dad. He was a judge. And I mentioned him, and this dude, this classmate of mine from high school, jumps in and says, yeah, man, he sent me up the river. I was like, bruh, he was supposed to. You got convicted. There was evidence. And you didn't have to go that damn route. And he actually did say, yeah, true. He wasn't no bad dude. He was doing his job. I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing anyway. He did come back and say that. But his first initial gut reaction was, that's that ninja that, you get it? Still stuck with him a little bit. And every so often, he's got one of the few good factory jobs left in the country. One of the few. He got one of those now. He's actually making a lot of money, but he's working overtime and he's always exhausted. But every so often, he'll put a post up like, yeah, man, I keeps it real. I never snitched. Or he'll say something like, I made bad decisions in life, but I wouldn't get that time back because it made me who I am. And I'll be thinking to myself, that's not what made you who you are today, bro. What made you who you are was the day you decided to stop doing that nigga shit. That spear-chucking ass jigabosity. Stop acting like one of them savages out of Tarzan movie. That's the day you became who you are. When the day you looked, it wasn't that day in high school you looked and said, my house is nice. My parents give me stuff. I need to prove that I'm a real nigger to the other niggers. That's not the day that you became who you are. And that's how he would have sounded back at that point. With the hard R, because that's how he came up. No. A lot of guys that are formers are sitting up talking this ignorant shit like, well, it made me who I am today. No. The day you decided not to do that is what made you who you are. But what's stopping you from being an even better version of that is you mistakenly think you had to go through that sugar knit. No, you didn't. You need to stand up and tell them how dumb that life is. And Mlavo pointed this out, and this is true. Went to school with a lot of guys like this, they only sold drugs to get girls. I know, because I know about that, bro. The reason I know about that is because I remember at a time when I was going to take a particular class at night, and I could ride my bike. I could ride my bike there because it was that close. And I had his bag with the uniform. I changed when I got there. And one day this chick, I had this chick on whom I had previously had a crush for about a few weeks before. She see me, she'd be like, Black, where you going? She want to get in my business. And I look at the bag, I point to the bag, I would say, I'm gonna make some money. I didn't even do this trying to impress the chick. I already knew she wasn't shit. I said that just to try to fly under the radar. And I told you, I came in a Huxtable I grew up in the Huxtable neighborhood. But we had that street nigger culture chip in us. I didn't do it to impress her. I knew I couldn't. I did it to not get any more attention from her, to be neutral so that I could just continue on paddling my bike to that other class right outside the neighborhood. The good thing is this, though. See, nowadays, a lot of you black men in my audience actually represent a shift from that. And that's why I said, somebody type in the chat room, no more Nick culture, no more lost value system. The reason I said that earlier was because of this. It is the BMPTs. Someone type that in the chat, BMPT, Black Male Passport Travelers. It's the BMPTs, be they SYSBM or IBMOR or Passport Bros or other, Passport Gang as an example. It is them who are representing the breakaway from even the idea that we need to be the negative stereotype, the idness. Speaking of which, for SYSBM and Passport Bros, there's a young brother that offers merchandise. And you actually have the option now to get regular t-shirts. He started with the long sleeve shirts and the sweaters so that we could recognize each other in train stations and airports. But he recently also added in just regular t-shirts for when you out and about walking around in Brazil or Thailand or Indonesia, or take your pick. And this young brother's actually about to bounce out too. So I think I'll put the link to that in the chat. Give me a moment. I'm going to look for that right quick. I'm going to put that link in the chat, inshallah, so that if anybody wants to go and support this young brother, they can do it. Let's see here. I know where to go to get it. Let's see. All right. Sorry about this, guys. I just have to got to go find this right quick. Open in new pop-up. There we go. We'll do this in a pop-up. And I'll put that link in the chat. I just got to go into my own community tab to get it. Yep, found it. So this will come up in a bit. You'll see this. It'll be in the chat room. Chat room. Why did I say chat room? It'll be in the chat box shortly, inshallah. Hold up. That is not right. Oh man. I know I changed this. All right. Sorry about this pause, but it's technologically speaking, it's a lot to get this sort of thing done the right way. Oh man. Boy, I swear, this is why I smash computers. This is why I do that. He actually put up some merchandise with my name on it, but I wasn't seeking that out actually. Huh. Well, in any case, it's in the community tab from 6 days ago. And it's going to have some an SYSBM design on it. I'm done trying to paste it in here. It won't work. Nothing I do is going to make it work either. If I smash this thing 100 times, it wouldn't make a difference. I'm getting this redirecting thing, and God knows I don't want that. So, oh, wait. Yep, I know what to do. Give me a moment. Got it. Go to site. Hurry up. There we go. Now I'll be able to paste this in for you guys. There it is. It's in the chat now. So that's so that we can be more recognizable to each other when we're out and about and traveling. Long sleeve stuff and sweaters, that's for the well-conditioned airports and train stations. And the t-shirts, of course, for when we're out and about. Because we generally, you ever notice that most of us BMPTs like to go to tropical climates? You ever notice that? I mean, it's not a whole bunch of us flocking to Europe. We'll go visit Europe, but we'll be trying to spend most of our time where the weather's nice. What does that tell you about us? Because I can tell you, one of the ways I know when someone thinks that they're wired is that they want to go and live in Europe, Switzerland, in the winter, in February. You know, that's when they want to go. They want to take a ski vacation all year round. That's when. But we trying to go back home. We're trying to go to not even the mountains of South America where it's cold. No, we be trying to go to Colombia, to Brazil, maybe visit Argentina, which is mostly outside the tropics, right? We be trying to go to Panama, Costa Rica, maybe Belize for a little bit, southern Mexico, the motherland, and not the north either. We be trying to go to the tropics like Ghana and Cape Verde, Ethiopia. We ain't even trying to swamp the north like that because it ain't tropical there. So this young brother decided to put the t-shirts out for when we were out and about. But yeah, you know, we getting back on track. You BMPTs in my audience actually make up, or you comprise and you represent the breakaway from this. Passport OG represents that. What did he decide to do? He said, F what the gynocracy says, I'm learning Japanese. Now he shows videos, and when they talk or write in Japanese, he tells us what it says. I can't do that in Arabic that well if people speak that quickly. And I certainly can't do it if they're coming with slang. I can't do it. It's not that I don't want to, I just can't. Much as I'd love to, it's not something I could pull off. You know, you all represent the opposite of what King represented. But we're also going to have to be careful to not take on that same bad habit and mistake into the future, in which if we did come up that rough way, we start bragging about it, even if it's low-key bragging, a humble bragging. Well, you know, I went that route, and if you say that you went that route, that's fine, but you got to say to them, it wasn't even fun when I did it. Don't be glorifying that stuff. When you start talking to that which draws people into that lifestyle, you counter that by saying, this is what the trap is. That's just bait. If people are talking about, well, you know, I want to live that life, man. I don't want to get up early and have to go and clock in. You say, yeah, well, I mean, you could start a business where you go in when you want, but you got to be there long enough to make that thing work. So if you just want to work a later schedule, you start your business where you do it. That's one thing. But if you just like, I just want to lay around, not have to show up any particular place for any length of hours. I don't want to apply myself. I'm trying to avoid having to exercise any self-discipline. Well, then that offer to do that is the bait, because the trap is this. They sit up and say, man, I want to be able to eat whatever the hell I want to eat when I want to eat it. Well, guess what? They're going to offer you this now only temporarily so that they can trap you, put you in prison, and then you cannot eat what you want to eat when you want to eat it. You eat what's in the cafeteria, and if you're lucky and you get money on your books, you can eat out the commissary. We got to start doing that. And we got to start saying to these young brothers that don't have to come up this way, you know what, man? That ain't your fault. And not only that, but if you are sick and tired of that lost value system that has something to say to you because you're not coming up that way, then this is what we're going to do. Come see me, young blood. And then we show them how we living. And this is going to be why it's important for us to put together some documentaries too. When y'all are on YouTube showing what it's like for you living where you live, that's important. Because others of us who can't make movies and documentaries can then turn around and send links to how you live. And we can say, look, young blood, this is not a movie. It's not glorifying it, but it is showing this is what the life is like. You can live like this, and you can fill your entertainment up with what you want to fill it up with without gunshots and gunfights and stuff you don't want to go through anyway, because even cats living that life don't think that that's entertaining. But we got to let them know, one, yeah, they ain't going through that. Number two, they weren't supposed to, and that's a good thing. And offer them an environment and an alternative to the environment that acts like going through this is necessary for you to be a real black man. And that's a doggone shame that it's like this, the way that it is right now, that that none of them sat up and said, though they did what they were supposed to do as parents financially, they did. And I want them to continue doing that. The issue is that not one of them said, King, you don't know that life and you're not supposed to know it. It's not your fault you don't know it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Just don't brag about it, because that's hustling backwards. That's the only mistake the parents made. That's what they did wrong. I understand. Now, I didn't even see the whole thing. There was a point where I listened, but I didn't look. And I heard him say, get off me, nigga. And then it sounded like his wind was cut off a little bit. I heard that T.I. and King actually fought. And that's what this leads to. You know, we black dads love to say, boy, they know not to hit me, and start thumping our chest. And yeah, our kids ain't supposed to hit us. We also ain't supposed to hit them if they don't get out of line. But we are supposed to guide them. And if they go off that guidance, then it's on them. But if we fail, that's on us. And that argument was an honest mistake on the part of the parents. I'm not saying they meant to do it. I'm not even saying they were negligent. But this is one of the things missing from the culture of both generations that we saw, the parents and the kids' generation. What was missing was the understanding that it is not his fault that he's not ghetto and hood. And that the glorification of Nick culture is wrong. There's a fine line between being ethnic and being a stereotypical nigger. And we have to be mindful of that as an ethnicity if we're going to get out of this lost value system. Right now, the only part of our community, or our population, I should say, the Black population that I see finally saying we're done with that mess are Black men to a certain extent and overwhelmingly BMPTs. No more jigabosity. No more spear chuckerism. We're done with that. And just think back. When I left the United States, this wasn't there. It wasn't as widespread as it is now. I didn't find out about the Black manosphere, I think, till late 2018. That's when I found out. Didn't know it was there. Had I known, I would have publicized this all over the place. Hey, Black man, you sick of the foolishness? You sick of the effery? Hey, Black man, are you sick and tired of having to be a stereotypical N-word? A swaggering, idness, niggerilla out of somebody else's stereotypes, your enemy stereotypes of you in order to have to bitter gitch? Bitter gitch is a spoonerism. Try not to curse. Y'all know what I mean, I think. Someone put that in the chat room. Bitter gitch. Bit gitches. Yeah, man, I bit gitches. What we bragging for? I can't sit up here and say that the sisters, and I mean they're each other's sisters, not ours. I can't sit up and say that they represent this breakaway. It's not something they did. They insisted on sexual boycott, not marital boycott. Oh, no, not that. Not friend zone boycott, but they insisted on an actual sexual and damn sure reproductive boycott of Black men that didn't represent the swaggerilla, the stereotype, the itness. They said, no, we're not doing that. We might marry them, but only after we had a savage's kids. And you know how, we all know that one dude, he's a baby daddy, but he a good dude. You know how those guys got to be baby daddies? It's what I put up here on the screen right now, M. Lavo's comment. Actually, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm going to put it up here again. This one. Good dudes. But they had to hide their goodness from these broads long enough to shoot the club up. Another thing, too, that we do know about is this. When we know these young brothers, the good dudes, and they became somebody's baby daddy, we know those guys, man. By the way, does that link show up in the chat? I put it on the screen, but I want to make sure this link shows up in the actual chat, too, so that y'all can just click on it. Let me know if the link is not coming up in the chat so you can click it. But, when these good dudes actually did become baby daddies, they had to hide their goodness long enough to shoot the club up. And I'm not sitting up and saying that they should have fornicated. What I'm saying is that for any good Black man to actually have his own kids, he has to either hide the fact that he's good or accept to be a stepdad first before he becomes a dad. The whole, I don't mean without exception, but the collective, not just the majority, that's 51%, the overwhelming majority of reproductively active Western Black women were on the same sexual reproductive boycott of non-stereotypes. So it is not the sisters that have been funding this and driving this or pushing this. They didn't do that. Walaikum salam, Black Agent. I got a few favorite subscribers. He's one of them. Long story, y'all. So in any case, yeah, right here, right here, with a time zone. It's like, yeah, with a time zone, it woke up. We did. We got up. We said, no, man, shuck this fit. I don't hate black women. And some of y'all know me in person and you know I don't hate black women. I wanted to give them credit. My dad did. My father got somewhat red-pilled by two things. Number one was time. Number two was my aunt. My aunt used to be a feminist. Then later on, my aunt red-pilled my father to a certain extent. I don't think she knows the term red pill, but when she actually became a doctor, and later on they had an influx, an increase in the number of nurses and female doctors simultaneously, she said to my dad, she said, brother, I can't stand working with female doctors and nurses. They don't want to work. That's what she said to my father. She said, I know I got to work. I don't want to, but I'll do it. But they don't. They're trying to avoid it. They go to work and they try to avoid work. And would still want to get a salary. And I'm sick of this. Black Agent, you're gonna kill me, boy. Cut this man. Oh God. Oh man. Y'all gonna bear murder me. No for this. He said, who is this light-skinned dude? With your oversized nostrils and making ghetto type puff dreads. Oh God. Now to be honest with you, man, Black Agent, you can't be over here making fun of these. You can't be over here making fun of wide noses, man. Come on. Whoa, man. No, the nostrils actually, he got the nostrils he's supposed to have. But he would have died. He would have died to put. Oh God. See, the thing is, the reason I'm laughing is because I've heard Black Agent talk before. So when I read it in his voice and his accent. So that's why I'm over here just dying laughing. Oh God, man, I better never get a bad haircut and be seen by Black Agent. Lord have mercy. Whoo. But look, and this was messed up, Brian. That was not something she needed to be doing. Right there. She didn't need to say that. And to answer your question, Black Agent, the guy in the thumbnail, that's King Harris, T.I.'s son. He was sitting up on he went live and was recording himself talking about he hood, even though his parents are rich, he's still hood, ghetto, he real. And he was like, you drop me off anywhere, man. I stand on business, man. I spend time at grandma's house. And they started saying to him, we ain't raised you like that. And he got in an argument with his dad's mom. And I didn't watch this part, Black Agent, but apparently his dad had to grab him. And that messed me up. I was like, I heard something similar, but I wasn't watching the video. I was getting ready for work, and I didn't want to see that. I don't like to see that type of thing. It's not funny to me. Y'all give me a moment. I'm going to go on mute because I think I'm about to sneeze. Hold on, y'all. All right, my bad. Yeah, I did sneeze too. And whoo, man, glad y'all didn't hear that. See, the thing is, I got oversized nostrils too, some nostrils. So when I sneeze, sometimes my headphone flies off. And I'm glad y'all didn't hear the sonic boom, and then the crashing sound of the headphones. Was I got them old school Jackson nostrils. Oh man. Oh, bruh. Assalamu alaikum, Abdul Malik Abu Thalatha. Bruh. Thanks for letting me know, Black Agent, that the link is in the chat. Man, bruh. This is what it is to which the hyenas are trying to hold us collectively. And they got a lot of dudes. See, when you grow up and you don't realize this and you start validating the hyenas, you also hold us to standards of nutrition. Indirectly, they held King to standards of nutrition right along with whoever else did this before, the reaction to which King opened up the phone and said what he said. It was a reaction. Somebody told King, you ain't real enough, you ain't authentic enough, you ain't black enough. Someone said this to him. He opened the phone up and they didn't help matters in that regard. They were willing to invalidate his claims, but they were not willing to invalidate the notion, the standard that you should have to go through this to be real and authentic. And shuck that fit. This is not our culture. We cannot afford this. And right now, there's a few black men that may or may not know about the black manosphere. And in the black manosphere that is promoting this. And then when I told y'all in my last live that I was really vaingloriously proud of black men for the most part, it's one of the reasons why. It's because who led this? It wasn't Simps that led this. They may not have participated in the foolishness and the effery, the stereotype, the nutrition, but they still validated women's love for that. They didn't correct these broads for their hybristomania. I didn't say hybristophilia for a reason. I intentionally called it hybristomania. Which one is more extreme? Philia for something or mania for it? And that's why I said hybristomania. They validated that. They said, well, you know, the strong man gets the punani in the animal kingdom, and the weak male doesn't. So they were equating nutrition behavior with strength, just like the Gitches, just like the hyena. That is not okay. Never was. Never was okay. Never was acceptable. So the Simps had nothing to do with that. Even when Ungawa Johnson stood up and preached about getting rid of some of the thugs and saying some of them you can't fix, you got to put them to sleep. I don't have a problem with that. You have the ones who are corrigible, and if you give them a legal and better alternative, they'll go for it because they really weren't about the stereotypes anyway. And then you got the ones who actually really ain't about to do a whole lot of dirt. And that's good that they're not, but they're going to pretend like they're doing dirt. And then they turn around and do worse dirt. First, they want the rep. Then they got to keep the rep by actually doing the dirt. And they're willing to kill anyone and do anything to get it. And then they become incorrigible. And there's nothing you can do but put them to sleep. They do exist. Ungawa wasn't wrong about that. But even when he preached this, the fact remains, he did not lead a breakaway from dysfunction, even if he meant to do it. Now, somebody said he was a government plant. I'll let y'all in on a little something I found out. Not about him specifically, but about some of these plants. We got so many pseudo-scientific, pro-whack, slow step no-tips that are just that whacked out, that they don't have to actually be sent in as plants. Right now, whatever government department is responsible for holding back the black population of North America does not have to go and try to find someone and send them in to say this dumb stuff. All they got to do is sit back and wait for the next one. That's it. There's a supply of them. and they'll do dumb stuff. And they frauds. Government, see, if they were sent in, they got to be on payroll. You know, Mother Cuss would, well, let some FBI agents show up at your house. Tell you they want you to do this for them. They're not even going to ask you to just do it for free. They're going to offer you something, right? And you're going to negotiate if you're going to take that deal. Man, what deal did Ongawa get? He ain't started a school. He could have been had a school. He could have said, if he was actually on payroll as a government plant, he could have said, get me this school. Let me make the money from this school. You pay me through the school. And matter of fact, you do the curriculum work for me. I'll just get the teachers and we'll teach the kids. And we'll teach them what you need. How about that? See, if he was really government plant on payroll, I mean intentionally government plant, he would have worked it like this. They're not offering him a furthermucking dime or penny because he's doing this for free of his own volition. And he ain't the only one. Not our brother Impolite, anybody? Who didn't even have the decency to tell us where his parents were from. It wouldn't have really made a difference if he'd been honest about it, but he just let everybody assume he was FBA. Now, as I stated, I do not tolerate anyone faking the funk to make someone else look bad. I don't tolerate any group within the black race doing this to make another group within the black race look bad. I don't tolerate it when an African American pretends to be Jamaican or Nigerian trying to make them look bad. And I don't tolerate it when any of them tries to make the other look bad. So I'm not going to tolerate it when someone from continental parentage decides to just act a damn fool and then try to make us look bad. No, shuck that fit. And then don't use pro-blackness when you're doing dumb stuff like this. Don't preach. If you're going to do dumb stuff like this, don't preach pro-blackness. That's a disgrace and an insult to the ones that actually were about that and had to pay dearly. So in any case, not our brother Impolite. He didn't have to be a government plant. I mean, on payroll. He voluntarily, of his own volition, went and did some stuff and misled a bunch of people. Voluntarily. We have to watch out for them. And these guys did not lead an actual breakaway of black men from dysfunction. Instead, what do they say? We gonna go and recruit only in the prisons and the ghettos. Quiet as it's kept. A lot of African Americans made that mistake at one point. A lot of African Americans made that same mistake. Exact same mistake. They sat up and they said, well, you know, we're going to go into the prisons and the ghettos. And there's a part of me that sits up and says, okay, that's fine and all, but why does it have to be that, only that? They made that mistake. They were not willing to go into, they weren't willing to go into universities to do the recruiting. So when you see a middle-class African-American and a Muslim, that does exist. It's actually more common than we would think. But the thing is that that's in spite of, not because of efforts. You understand? That's why. In spite of efforts, because a lot of them were only willing to go into these places because they felt comfortable talking to them, because they didn't think that going into a black suburb, a Huxtable type neighborhood, was going to get the job done. They just assumed that if you were black and educated and middle class, you were going to be too bougie for this. Now, you might have been, we might have been too bougie to be wearing bow ties and selling bean pies. Yeah, we were too bougie for that. Of course we were. Put your suit, put your tie on. It has to be a bow tie. You got to have all of it buttoned all the way up. Out there that August heat selling bean pies. And after you've been out there for 4 hours and they done rotted in the heat and you starting to smell the egg, you still got to sell them. And if you don't turn the money in, you get beat up. Well, yeah, of course we too bougie for that. But when you just actually preach what the message was, we weren't too bougie for it. But there was a time for a few decades in which even amongst us, we were struggling worse than we are now because the recruiters, the preachers were only willing to go into the ghettos and prisons. And I'm not knocking the ones who were able to do it, but there were those of us who would not go anywhere else. It had to be the hood, the county jail, or the state penitentiary. So, and by the way, even they, to be honest with you, even the Muslims of that time, not today, it's different, but even of that time, did try to call us out of a psychological funk in which we were. They did try. The reason why they did not try harder was that I'm talking about 70s and 80s. The reason they did not try harder was because 70s and 80s, we were not too far gone. Not too far gone. They went through the music. They decided to give it their best shot through the music, and they found that when the music was positive, we know what happened in the late 80s. We already know. I don't have to tell you. And they found that the message was stifled. But one of the reasons why they quit in the 90s trying so hard to preach this, they didn't quit altogether. And when I say Muslims, I'm talking Orthodox Muslims, but I'm going to give the NOI credit where it's due, even though we have a different religion. They did try to preach this more reform even in the 90s. They did. And even though the 5%ers and we have a different religion, we do not agree on religion, I'm going to give them credit for the behavior where it's due. They did try to preach a type of upliftment, not as organized, not as disciplined, but they did try. But one of the things that all of us found out in the 90s was that if you preached behavioral reform to black masses, what happened? You got shut down. You started saying, we got to watch what we say, eat, and do. The masses would just boycott you, and they would reach for the radio and turn the volume up while playing NWA. And then later on, anything else ratchet. Y'all might remember Too Short had a foul mouth back in the 80s, but he was funny. He wasn't a threat. He was just funny. You might remember Two Live Crew. They had foul mouths, kind of perverted, but that's more of a human weakness. Then NWA. NWA. I don't have to tell you what that meant. Those of you old enough to remember, you know. And that's why Cube, I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons Cube said, man, to hell with this. And after that, what did Cube do? He went pro-black in his rap. And if it hadn't been Cube, nobody would have listened to him either. There was only so much listening to him they were going to do. You think he went into acting just because he wanted to? He may have, but he also had to go into acting because when he was rapping positive and about some liberation, people said the beat's good, the rhymes are tight, but they didn't actually internalize the message. They did try. I'm giving them credit. They tried. They were not able to do it. We were not able to. I was a kid at the time. Now you got the Black Manosphere, which actually has had more influence from Muslims and Hebrew Israelites alike than what many of us know. We're not aware of how much either one is. Just to be fair, just to be objective about it, most of us are unaware as to how much either group has had an influence on the Black Manosphere. I don't know exactly how much. I know it's a lot, but I don't even know what percentage to give it. I couldn't give it a number. I know it's there. I know it's underappreciated from both the Muslims and the Hebrew Israelites. But it came to this, and that's the funny thing. The reason I'm saying that is because when we did this, we couldn't just preach to the masses, because every male, every straight male knew that if they behaved themselves with dignity, they were reproductively boycotted. And that's not something you're going to get straight men or women to accept. Not easily. Your mental liberation, mine, the rest of ours, did not come until the Black manosphere formed and said, we will no longer limit ourselves to Black women for reasons of race loyalty. And then look how free our minds were. Once we said we're not going to let them exclude us reproductively from anybody else, we're not going to tie ourselves to them if they're not going to do the same thing. All of a sudden, minds became free. What do we start doing? Going abroad, learning other languages, helping each other learn them, try to help each other earn livings abroad. All of that. As a matter of fact, we got this brother right here. I'll put his link back in. He's offering apparel to buy so that we can recognize each other, so that we can more easily connect with each other abroad, as Roger Spicer said. And Black Agent, you're welcome. And if I can get it shipped to Saudi one day, I'll get some too. As a matter of fact, where I live, it's actually started to get cold. Yesterday and today we're actually kind of cool outside. So if I find a way to get it shipped here, I'll get it. I don't know when it'll be. It may be a while before, but I'm just saying I could be in the market for something like this. For the long sleeve ones. I want to get a long sleeve and a short sleeve for the next time that I go and travel. Because I'd love to be in somebody's airport and wear one of these and have brother check me. I'll be like, hey, man, you SYSBM. And then I get to talking. Wait a minute. Oh, you Black mind. I'd love for that to be the case. It happened in the Houston airport. And that was great. Yeah, man. Houston airport. I was like, yeah, I made my order at the Houston airport. I was getting ready to catch the flight to Germany to come back here. I was at the Whataburgers. Brother man said, you sound familiar. Where I know you from? I said, have you heard of Kevin Samuels? And mind you, Kevin Samuels was a few weeks being mainstream famous at that point. He said, yeah, I heard about him. Everybody has. And I said, so you might be familiar with a few other voices. And I let him, I took him to my channel. And I said, when you get time, listen, and then let me know if this is where you heard me before. I never heard back from him, but he said that I think I've seen this symbol before. The avatar I had at that time for my channel. But you look at what we're doing right now. You look at what the Black manosphere, with the moral support of the religious amongst us, even though I endorse one religion. For endorsement, I endorse one. But to give credit where it's due objectively, if you look at the religious amongst us and the influence that we've had in the Black manosphere, and even the non-religious, to be honest and be fair to them, what has happened is that it is when we have formed a Black manosphere that now there is this major push to get away from this culture, the Chitlin culture. I'll tell you this. If someone were to say to me, well, what advice would you give King? I would give King two pieces of advice. Why did I say two advices? What's wrong with me? I would give him two pieces of advice. I'd say to him, number one, read an English translation of the Quran. Number two, look up 2 words online and binge listen. You got time. Black manosphere. That's what I would tell him. So that he could understand that he doesn't have to be this. He would go back then and he'd probably thank his mom and dad and say to them, thank you for getting me out of that. Thank you for making it so that I didn't have to go up that way. Would I tell him to listen to Dennis Sperling? Hell yeah. Absolutely. But I would also tell him, listen to the Black Manosphere. King Harris is not going to hear of this particular live stream for me. It would be nice, but he's not going to. He can't. The chances are just too slim. But there's some other King Harrises out there who may not be rich, but they're comfortable. They're doing well because mom and dad got that for them. Did the work before they had them or when they were still babies. And all they know is a life of relative security. Relative. I mean, it ain't the hood. And they might hear this. If you are a young black male right now and you have anybody putting into your head that you need to somehow go through a ghetto thug life rite of passage, this is for you. You don't. If you need a rite of passage, you can look up organizations for it. You can discuss this with somebody that you know. How do we go from, or how do we demarcate the boundary between boyhood and manhood? You can discuss this with them. And if they're actually honest, they will tell you, you can do it, but you must understand it is not overnight or the span of an hour. It's not that. It is not like that. Whatever it's going to be a process with steps. Whether it takes months or years, that's what it's going to be. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and say that we need to do like the Maasai used to do, where you have to go and kill lions. Lions damn near went extinct because of that. You don't get to marry a woman till you go out there and kill a lion. For what? Why? You gonna eat it? Go catch a zebra, kill that. They fight back too. Boy, they'll bite a plug out of you. People to sleep on that. I'm not gonna sit up here and say that you need to wait until you're an adult and then with full consciousness and no anesthesia, sit there and let somebody with rusty tools circumcise your junk. I'm not going to sit up and tell you that either. It's not necessary. But if you feel you need this, and you are being told that it's about the hood and all that, then what you do is you go and you get with someone, an adult man you trust, and you ask them what is the demarcation. How would they explain the demarcation between boyhood and manhood? And you might be the first one to ask them that. So if they need time to think about it and put it in words and get back to you, give it to them. And then take their advice later. But defining black masculinity by the ghetto and by poverty, and then stereotypically negative behaviors that don't necessarily have to follow poverty, it's not the way to go. Because see, what King was doing is that King was pretty much saying to the white supremacists, I fully accept your ideas and outlook for myself. I accept to view myself through your stereotyping of my people and to judge and assess myself accordingly. And if I fail to meet that stereotype and prove you correct, I'm not a real black man. That's what King was doing. See, y'all might remember that movie ATL. I think it was ATL, in which T.I. played that artist. I mean, an actual drawing artist. And he was dating Lauren London's character, New. Look how this shaped out in real life. He had to put his son in some kind of hole, grab his arm and neck or something, from what I heard. He wound up having to do this to his own son for the exact same reason that his character had to tell Nunu to get to stepping. Peace, Akialis. Whoa, I was wondering why my screen got so dark. Now I got to go for another hour. You see, you take a look at that. In that movie, T.I.'s character had a younger brother that he was trying to keep out of that foolishness and trying to help get away from the foolishness. One of the things that's going to happen is this. And that is that we're going to have to actually raise our kids to where they can meet each other. This is important. And most of us are not going to be, maybe about half of us are going to have our kids with Black women. Others of us are going to have our kids with Asian women. When I say Black, I mean racially Black, not just Black American. But we're going to have to let these internationally Black children and these Blasian children meet each other, keep in touch with each other, encourage each other. And if some caricature trying to be what King is trying to be, or some caricature like King swaggers up and tells one of our kids, oh, so you want to listen to the music and you want to rep the style, but you don't want to live a life. Tell your kids ahead of time to say, you fucking right. I don't want you to live that life either. Tell your kids to say that. I don't want this for me or you or any of us. This is important that we tell this to our kids when we introduce them to each other, and we tell this to our kids when they're young. Because at this point, we're going to have to start something. We're starting a new culture already, but understand this. You might remember stories about when the Black middle class emerged, which was, it was right before my birth. And it was before the births of many of you in the audience. Many of you were in your 30s on average in my audience. Some of you were in your 50s. You can remember the emergence of the Black middle class. I remember hearing about it. The Black middle class was going to be a new culture. And mind you, remember back then, we weren't as dysfunctional at that point as we are now. Or I should say, as we were a few years ago, less than a decade ago. We were not. But it was going to be a new Black culture with less dysfunction. It was going to be that. And what did the parents try to do when they got into the Black middle class? What they tried to do, some of you who grew up Huxtable, you might remember. Now, mind you, I'm not saying Cosby. King Harris is growing up Cosby. I'm saying Huxtable. If you grew up Huxtable, you might remember the NMA, the National Medical Association, Black doctors having these conventions every summer, bringing their families. That's where you, as a Black middle class child or upper class, if they didn't know you were rich, got to meet other Black middle class kids. That's where you got to meet them. I remember the 80s. Boy, that was a time of hope for me. But what happened? The dysfunction got worse. And then at some point, with the large help, actually, at some point, really through the efforts of the hyenas and their simps and their mandingos and their gynocrat goons, which was most of us at the time because we didn't know anything different, the dysfunction crept in even to the middle class. And now in my childhood neighborhood, my Huxtable neighborhood, we got cats that died from drinking themselves to death. We got cats that died from gunshots. We got cats that went to jail and are still in jail. We got two of them grew up next to each other doing a life sentence in the same prison. And they were not friends growing up. One of them raised by pro-whack parents, fist in the air, ooga booga, diminutizing me because I was learning Spanish. I remember that. Well, they learn in Swahili. Why don't you learn that? It's not in the school. I remember that. My parents telling me, my parents being pro-Black now, they said to me, that couple's crazy. And then their son, with his African name, was dissing the little boy growing up next to him because the little boy growing up next to him had a white dad. He didn't diss the boy for anything that the boy did. His daddy white. I don't trust him. Brett, it's your neighbor. How long y'all been living together? Pretty much all our lives. So why don't you just leave the kid alone? Because I don't like him, so I got to do him wrong. That's what this kid was like. Guess what? Later on, That same dude with an African name got him a girlfriend. I guess she wanted to leave. He burnt her body in her car. He killed her, burnt her body in her car, and was answering her phone when her family was calling. He keep answering his phone like, he would keep on answering the phone. Yeah, I had to handle my mother cuss word business. Y'all ain't gonna hear from her no more. Of course, he got caught, got sent away, doing life. He ain't getting out. And the little boy next to him, having been diminutized for being half white, he started getting into the bad life. And this was after the boy with the African name was already up on a life sentence. The boy next to him finally got him a girlfriend. She always wanted a whole lot of stuff. I told some of y'all that story. He wound up murking a drug dealer. She got picked up for shoplifting, and to get herself out of that, she gave him up for the murder. I think he broke into a drug dealer's house, and the drug dealer happened to be home, surprised him, he killed him. Because she wanted stuff. So later, when they ain't even together no more, she shoplifts. Gets picked up. Well, you know, he got a body on him. Man, look. So he goes up for life. My friend's younger brother did some time. My younger brother's friend, between my age and my brother's age, did 11 years on some robberies. One dude, he was from LA. He would come visit during the summers. Then he came to live with his grandma after he finished high school. He worked at a bank. He was the inside man on a robbery. He got caught. Dumb stuff. Brick. Robbery. Had to do some time. Still got that on his record. His brother, Cass, I forgot why he had to do time. Leroy had to do some time. Major drug dealer. Moved into the house next door to his parents because they weren't going to have him selling drugs out their house, but he wanted to stay in the neighborhood. So he saved up the house because, you know, he was still a drug dealer. By the time they found out he was and confronted the fact that he was selling drugs, he had saved up enough to go. And this was also in the 80s too. So he owned a house. Before this boy could legally drink, he owned the house next door. Can you imagine? All this in a Huxtable neighborhood. Because the dysfunction crept in and they thought they had to be this way. So what I'm saying and taking all this time to say is that at this point, now us BMPTs are going to have to get our kids in contact with each other outside of the West so that they can stay out away from the dysfunction. They can keep in touch with their ethnicity without the dysfunction negatively and wrongly associated with it. That is a must. It has to be this way. Someone type continuity in the chat. Someone type permanently in the chat. See, A. LaRue had to deal with this. A. LaRue, I think you mentioned that you were growing up Huxtable. Well, that your parents are doing okay, in other words. I think you mentioned something like that to me before. And by the way, I'm not going to tell all A. LaRue's business. Not all of it. I don't even know all of it. But I can tell you this. Y'all can ask A. LaRue, and he can tell you about cases of paternity fraud, and let him tell you where this is. If y'all want to ask him, y'all can do that. Okay, so you might mean that you Cosby then. If you mean super Huxtable, you might mean you Cosby. Black and rich. And I hope so. I would hope for that. But you know what? In order to keep the ability to stay doing as well as we are, and at least keep the ability to stay out of trouble, we are going to have to, I mean, who are our kids going to be around? We can't, let's be honest, we can't sit up here and just put them around a bunch of the Wyatt's kids. Y'all know what's going to happen. And I don't want y'all to do that. Just because we're not going to sit up here and participate in nigga stand no more does not mean that our enemies are now our friends. It don't work like that, and it shouldn't. We don't want to pick up their culture anyway. Boy, if I sat up here and told you about the dysfunction of them, some of you would say, yeah, I knew about that. And others of you would get surprised and say, oh, I hate them now. Then I got to pull you off for some of them to keep you out of jail. I know they dysfunctions. And they ain't got to be poor to have these dysfunctions. I ain't just talking about the trailer parks and the Appalachians either. One of the richest zip codes in New Jersey has a problem with incest. Don't ask me how I know. I'm not allowed to tell you. But it's true. One of the wellest office, I know that's not a word, I just made it up. Someone type black mind making up words in the chat. I'm just kidding. But one of the best off zip codes in New Jersey has a hospital nearby. And they're not allowed to tell you this. I mean, the healthcare workers are not allowed to tell you this. But what's going on is that, hold up, is this, okay, I can't answer this. Whew. It's bad. But the healthcare workers are not allowed to tell you this in terms of anybody's name, but they can tell you what they're dealing with. Yeah, man, they got to deal with cases where sometimes, you know, the wife and the daughter be fighting over the husband and dad. Like the wife's supposed to get the dingling, not the daughter. What they fighting for? So how did y'all get into this fight for which we're treating your wounds now and giving you a few stitches? Well, we had an argument. Yeah, okay, but y'all had an argument with each other. What's going on? One time the dad, it wasn't the mom or the wife that set up and said what they were fighting about. They were saying, just treat the injuries. It's not your problem. They wouldn't ask the dad, did you know about them fighting? He said, they fighting over me. Pops didn't have the decency to hide the stuff. Rich neighborhood. Their neighborhood. So they got it. We ain't trying to put our kids next to them. You go to the UK. What are they doing to the kids in the UK? It ain't black British politicians calling for that stuff. You ask somebody from the UK what they trying to put on them kids there. Muslim parents in the UK are pulling their kids out the public schools as best they can, but it ain't just them. Black, Muslim, and non-Muslim parents are trying to put their kids out to school, out to public schools, because of what they're putting in them, trying to put in their heads. We're not trying to put our kids next to them. Our kids are going to need each other. And either we're going to provide a society for the kids or give them access to a society in which it is not presented as their fault for not growing up ghetto and hood and thugged out. Or they're going to be subject to the pressures that tell them that, yeah, it's your fault. You didn't grow up in the hood. You need to feel guilty about this. You a sellout and you ain't a real N-word. It's either we provide for them an environment that says it ain't your fault, and we tell them that someone's going to come along and try to present it like it's their fault. Stick with this crowd over here that does not blame you for that. Either we tell them that, or it really don't matter where we put them. They're either going to be around folks that don't respect them as equals because they're black, or don't respect them as equals because they're not stereotypically N-word enough. And this is where we come in. So right here, right here when Roger Spice answered my question as to what we're doing. He said this: once we became a black manosphere and broke away from what it is that Keisha wants, once we did that, started connecting with each other abroad, right? When that happened, the way to keep this going is to seize the opportunity that was created when we started to connect with each other abroad. Not all of us are going to have kids. But if you're going to, they're going to have to know each other. In order for the kids to know each other, we're going to have to know each other. And in order for us to know each other, we're going to have to be able to recognize each other on sight. And in order for that to happen, well, that's why I'm pushing this link, even though it's not my link and it's not my merchandise. There's some Black Mind insignia on some of the merchandise. I didn't know that. The designer was nice enough to put that on. I really appreciate him doing that. But I found this out after I posted the link in the community tab. This is not mine. I want him to get every dime. Now, young brother, if you decide to pay me, you could do so in not cash, but no, I don't want a cut of this. Now I ain't gonna say nothing about Cash App today because some people came through on the Cash App already. Next week I might go live again, and then I might say the same thing Dennis Burner says, pay me for my time. But this time I've been pretty well. I've been done pretty well, and I gave them a shout out in the beginning. I do appreciate that. But I'm coming up on 2 hours now, and I'm not going to stay much longer. But the thing I wanted to say is that this time I'm pushing this link because I believe in it. For this merchandise because I believe in it. BMT Black Man Travels has his merchandise. I believe in that too. It's just that he already has the promotion, which is good. He's got it. Now we got another young brother. He's doing this for the BMPTs in general. Mostly SYSBM and Passport Bros. Largely because the IBMORs, they tend to know each other already. And they're generally going to be in the continent or in Black enclaves of Latin America. So they're in a position to already know each other. Those of us that are going to go in various places, especially Southeast Asia, for instance, we may still be meeting each other. But in order for us to have this, we have to be able to know each other. We're not going to all be in the exact same place, but understand this. Maybe you live in Chiang Mai. And there's another brother in the airport when you're traveling one day, he lives in Pattaya. Or he lives in Bangkok. And those are the only cities whose names I know. Oh, Phuket as well. Even though it's not spelled that way. But what I'm saying is that maybe you at the airport and you see another brother there, but you don't quite know, is he Red Pill aware? Or is he just there with the military? Is he just there visiting? Is he a simp? You really don't know, right? So what you do is you might say hello, give him the brother nod. You may not even know if he knows why you speaking to him because both of y'all Black. Now imagine the same situation, but you wore a t-shirt or a long sleeve shirt that said Passport Bro or SYSBM. Or later on, the design that just said BMPT. Let's say you did that. If you did that, and he did that, that's instant recognition. Y'all chop it up. Y'all keep in touch. Later on, y'all kids can get in touch with each other. So your kids are growing up in whichever city in which you live. They're learning English and Thai fluently, which they should. But there's some things about their people, some things about our people you do want them to know without the dysfunction. And if they turn the TV on and they see an old 80s movie, well, they're not going to get that. So where would that support come from? From you knowing each other. then your kids can know each other. And then there may be places to which we wind up living together. We may settle in certain neighborhoods or certain portions of Bangkok, certain parts of Pattaya, certain parts of Phuket, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing it, or Chiang Mai. And maybe it's not there. Maybe it's going to be the Philippines, and not just Manila either. Some of you might like Cebu. You settle there, but you don't know where the other ones are. You walking around, going to the market with your wife and girlfriend. I'm talking about them being the same one, by the way. And you got the t-shirt on. And another brother's got one on. Maybe it's a BMP, maybe it's a BMT, Black Male Travels t-shirt. Maybe it's Richie Mack, the Travel OG. Maybe it's some of his merchandise if he has any. Maybe it's the merchandise you can get in this link that I posted. What's going on, Gala Night? You know, maybe it's that. You got some of the merchandise on, they got some of the merchandise on, and you recognize each other. And as y'all chop it up, and since you can work, you're probably legally authorized to work there, and you can earn some money, and you're allowed to move where you want. You know what? Eventually, y'all might be able. What I'm saying is that you may not know necessarily who lives in the same city as you that's also a BMPT. You may not know who's another escapee from the hyenocracy. Well, it's not just every Black man that's going to be one. That would be nice. It's just not realistic. But then you start wearing some of this. And eventually, there are going to be these souvenir passports, not real passports, but just souvenir. Eventually, there'll be some souvenir passports, like joking passports, or passport wallets and holders that will have a BMPT logo. Not BMT, that's Black Male Travelers, but BMPT, Black Male Passport Travelers logo, or an SYSBM. Some of the same stuff on it. Eventually, there's going to be some passport wallets like that. And maybe you just pull one of those and put it in your hand. He sees it. He puts his in his hand. You recognize each other. Then you give each other the head nod, walk up, slap hands, touch bases. And then now your kids and their kids also got each other for support. We got to understand that. Another thing we also have to keep in mind is, I know we Black fathers, and we're not ever going to go and try to find somebody for our daughters, because we still got some of that in us. But let's be honest, if we have some of us are going to have daughters. The daughters are going to be half Black, surrounded by folks that do not look at even half Black women because of the race, not because of their behaviors, but because of the DNA. Somebody else's son that is just like her is going to be what she needs, whom she needs later on. For that to be the case, we have to think ahead like this. And for that to be the case, we have to look at recognizability to each other, not necessarily everybody else. Doesn't matter. But to each other, we have to have this recognizability. And this is how we can provide a context for our kids to come up in which it maybe never be, at least not personally face to face, put on a guilt trip about the stereotypical N-words that they're not, and the stereotypical ways they didn't grow up. And therefore, it's never in their head. And then they raise our grandkids without even an inkling of that. And if somebody just so happens to come to the grandkids and say, you didn't grow up this way, the grandkids will say, yeah, I didn't. I wasn't supposed to. What gives? What's the problem? So you can't go to somebody, if you want to talk about other cultures and how functional they are, even though they're about as functional and dysfunctional as ours. But if we want to hold them up to that standard, well, let's look at one of the things we can learn from them. Can you walk up to a Colombian and put them on a guilt trip about not growing up in the ghetto? Can you do that to them? Can you walk up to a Brazilian and put them on a guilt trip because they didn't grow up in the favelas? Now, you can go to a Jamaican who grew up uptown Kingston, and you could put him on a guilt trip because he didn't grow up in one of the garrisons of downtown Kingston. You can do that to them. But those are our folks, different accent, different nationality. They come from the same root as us, with two branches coming out the same trunk. You can go to some South Africans and call them cheese boy, cheese girl. That means they came up nice. And you can put them on a guilt trip about that. Can you go to somebody from Vietnam and put them on a guilt trip because they didn't grow up ghetto? You can't put Jeannie Mai on that kind of guilt trip. She may have, but if she didn't, you can't put Jeannie Mai on that. Say that again, Ren. You're not going to guilt trip whites for not growing up in a trailer park. You will not guilt trip Eastern Europeans who didn't grow up poor. You will not guilt trip Filipinos that did not grow up poor. You would not guilt trip Malaysians that didn't grow up poor. It won't work. There are those who do, but you can't guilt trip the ones that didn't. You can't say to them, you're not a real Thai. You're not a real Pinoy. You're not a real Malay. You can't say stuff like that to them, and they're going to buy it. Yeah, I need to spend time on the streets to prove my worth. They look at you like, man, shut this fit. Of course I didn't. If those are the kind of people you respect, let me point you in the direction of the worst neighborhood. I'm not allowed to go there. Maybe you will be. It's over that way. You can't really guilt an Arab for not growing up poor, but you can guilt trip some of them for not growing up in the desert or spending a lot of time in the desert. You can guilt trip some of the Bedouins about that. You'd be like, man, you don't camp out in the desert on the weekends much. Yeah, I need to get back to that. You can do that, but not growing up poor? No. You can't guilt trip them for not being in a gang. That's probably going to change in Riyadh in the next few years, but you can't guilt trip them for that. So we're going to learn from other cultures and uphold them like they're always worthy of us emulating. Okay, well, let's take this, for instance. So we have to do this now so that our grandkids at least will have this from the other cultures where they cannot be guilt tripped. It would be too foreign a concept. It would be like walking up to them and saying, you've never been dangerous to kids. Of course I haven't. I'm not even wired like that. What's the problem? Why are you saying it like it's a crime to be safe to kids? Yeah. We want that for our grandkids. For our kids, if we can get it. Damn sure for our grandkids. So we're going to do this work right now. As soon as I can get this stuff shipped to Saudi, I'm going to give me some of that merchandise. SYSBM. Absolutely. I might even get a coffee mug. My wife would be like, what is SYSBM? It's a long story, baby. I did that when I married you. Some of y'all got the Passport Bros option. Of course, Passport Bros has a high profile. So, you wear something like that, you all are going to bump into each other all the time. Y'all should be some of the first ones. So that not only will you know each other, but your kids will. That's important. We want to keep this breakaway. You want to do is really pro-black. You really pro-black. Okay, so you truly pro-black. You actually are. I don't mean pro-whack, no step, slow step, pseudo-scientific, talking about the black man could fly back in ancient Kemet 5,000 years ago till the white man came and took us to Mississippi. I ain't talking about that kind of foolishness. I'm just talking about you seriously do want to do what's good for black folk. Okay, one, escaping from the hyenocracy. That's one. But two, setting it up so that your kids can know each other, so that they can be around each other instead of having to find company from the gynocracy. I don't just mean marital company either. I just mean people brainwashed by it, because the gynocracy, the community, is going to implode. It's doing it already. You all know about the homelessness. You see it more than I do. I don't see the homelessness like that. I hear about it, but I don't see it because I'm not in the States. I got to look for a news story to find out. But since you guys know that it's there, y'all, some of y'all might remember on my last one, second last one, I said something about the homeless now being victims of predators. We don't even know necessarily which predators they are. Exactly. So if that's what they're going through, and that's going to become the standard if we're not careful, how's that black community in North America going to stay up? There's a future for a black community, but it's not going to be in the US and Canada. It ain't even going to be in the UK for that matter. I don't know about Australia, probably not New Zealand, but it ain't going to be in these areas. That's not where the future of black people is. But in order for there to be a future for black folks where we're going, we just got to be a bit more recognizable to each other. We're already recognizable to each other as black males abroad. That's the good thing. I don't have that. This tiger was born without the stripes. I be seeing brothers around a lot of times, and if they hear me talking, they speak English, then they realize it. But you know, man, I be seeing brothers around a lot of times, man, and they don't know. I see a lot of black Saudis out here. I give them the head nod sometimes, and they don't even realize I said anything to them. Not by voice, but giving them the nod. They don't even realize I spoke to them. I don't have that, but y'all do. You got that recognizability. Only thing you need is an extra layer. If I walked around with an SYSBM shirt on in some parts of the world, people would look at me and assume I don't speak English. They would think he doesn't know what that says. Passport bros, probably same thing. Or they would say, oh, anybody can be a passport bro. They might say that. But man, look, you guys, you can add this extra layer of recognizability you already have, and you're not going to be questioned about it. The Masons have it. If there is such a group as the Illuminati, they got something like this so they can know each other. And not only do the Masons have it, but actually every lodge has it. The York Rite have theirs. The Scottish Rite have theirs. Prince Hall have their ways of knowing each other. They flash certain signs to each other. If you're not one of them, you don't pick up on them. You don't respond properly. If you are, you respond properly. And you show your own and you establish that both of you are, in fact, members of this. That's just Masons. I'm not talking about Skull and Bones or anything like that. I'm not talking about CIA and no. Well, they got badges they can show each other. I'm talking about just Masons that we know exist, the different lodges that we know exist. And you know what? If they decide, I mean, they probably can't force their kids to marry each other, but that's damn sure an option. They can keep their kids in contact with each other, at least during their childhood, during their formative years. That's an option for them. We're going to have to do the same thing. Hold on, Crypto Finest. Is this who I think it is? Did you recently give me a buzz? I couldn't answer, but did you recently give me a buzz a few minutes ago, Crypto Finest? I'm trying to see if you are who I think you are. I'm not going to say your real name on here, but I'm just trying to figure out if that's who. I give you time to type that in. If it was you that was calling, I'm sorry I couldn't answer, but as you can see, I'm live. Hold on. I give you time to type the answer in here. And if you are crypto finance, check your Telegram now. If you're not, no biggie. But if you are, check your Telegram. If you who I think you are, and if not, don't, no biggie. But let me know. Type it in the chat, man. If you are who I think you are, from a similarly subtropical climate as mine. So in any case, y'all, been going over 2 hours, and want to give shouts out. Passport OG for giving me this idea. Shouts out to Black Agent for certain bits of help he's done. Bilal Gadzekpo, salam alaikum, brother. Yeah, I'm getting creative with my vocabulary. I have to a lot of times. So I want to give shouts out to Passport OG for the Chitlin analogy, because the Chitlins do represent, by themselves, Chitlins are a major symbol of a lot of the dysfunction, the preference for the worst thing you can ingest into your body. Pig and guts together with traces of boo-boo. And some of y'all have smelled chitlins before. And you can't understand how anybody could eat that. Oh, whoa. And shouts out to Dennis Sperling for attacking the whole notion that you need to brag about this stuff. I only wish that he had said at some point, it ain't your fault that you didn't grow up that way. You weren't supposed to. That's a good thing. Don't waste what you got. That's the only thing I wanted him to say different. Other than that, he hit the ball out the park. Shouts out to him. And shouts out to all of y'all for coming through, bearing with me, and for hitting the share button. Because at one point, we had 30 people in this mother cuss word. Shouts out to Paul Wilson for this one. Are you a traveling man? You know what, man? Until we have a way to visually recognize each other, some of us are going to be asking those whom we suspect exactly this question. Are you a traveling brother? Of course I'm a traveling brother. You see me traveling? What you mean by that? I meant, are you a passport brother? Well, I mean, I'm a brother with a passport. What you mean? See, it's a lot of doubt. But we get these visuals going, and they walk up to somebody and say, are you a traveling man? And point to the t-shirt or the sweater or the hoodie, or pull out the coffee mug, and then say, are you a traveling man? They'd be like, yeah, brother. What's your name, man? To get the chopping it up. Yeah, man, let's link up. Yeah, look, I live in the city over there, or I live in this neighborhood there. Let's link up. And then you get the kids together. Because you see, in nigga America, and I'm gonna call it that for a reason, you introduce your daughter to someone's son when they're kids, and then both of them grow up and they got a good bit in common. Now, she doesn't have to like him, he don't have to like her. But in 19 America, you do that. Your daughter's going to look at that boy and say, he's like my brother. Meanwhile, she's going to be sneaking out your house to go jump into some, probably not even an SUV, but an old Dodge Charger with some dude with a gold grill and a burner under the seat and some tats who know he can't come to the door and doesn't have to, because she going to sneak out to meet him. But then, let's say that you're the father of the son, and he grows up with her. She gonna be the one saying to her dad and you, when they get older, well, he's like my brother. That's in 19 America. If we're going to escape from it, we just have to make it such that the kids don't want to go back. That's all. that's going to take care of two things. Because see, when you get out of N19 America, it's not wrong for a guy and a lady that knew each other in childhood to decide in adulthood that they like each other. It's not wrong. If it's mutual, they can link up, and her friends are not going to come to her and say, ew, that's sick, you knew him when he was a kid. They're not going to do that. Now, if she's not interested, that's one thing. But her friends are not necessarily going to come to her and say, but y'all played together as kids. Why would you do that? He doesn't have any tattoos and baby mamas and felonies. This is not going to be the case in many of these other places. And now if a hyena follows you and she's able to become a single mom there and do that, then yeah, she might pass it on to her daughter. But let's be honest, they're not going to be in the same circles. Even if they did it, they ain't going to be in the same circles. So they're not going to proliferate this idea. So let's set that environment up, gentlemen, and let's make it so that we can recognize each other when we see each other so that we can set these environments up. Thank you all for listening again. I appreciate that. And as always, black heart, black mind, blackout. Assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Thank you for flying again with us on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. And should you decide to hit the Cash App on your way out of the jet black aircraft, please do not press in any numbers that are going to cause injury to you. But for now, please prioritize going to the link with the merchandise in it. I will leave that link again in the chat for the duration of the time that we are signing out. And gender, justice, forever.
This is a Soulfyah